Good morning and nuknech to all starships in the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta quadrants. This is Engaging with Picard on the Movers and Shakers Unlimited Network. I am your host, Josh Pritchett of the House of Josh. And I am joined as always by my partner in crime, Mr. Chris Pabone. Chris.
Good morning, buenos dias, guten morgen. Hello to all our friendly listeners out there and happy Earth Day weekend. Josh, is there something different about you today? Have you lost weight?
Why, yes, I have, Chris. I have lost 27 pounds since Christmas.
Nice. Well done, my
Yes.
friend. Well done.
Yes, yeah, just a matter of cutting back on some things and a lot more exercising. But I'm feeling great. Thank you for noticing. I appreciate that, buddy.
You're welcome. You look in prime fighting shape.
Yes, I am. I'm ready to take on a Gorn. Feeling good.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I think you could take on two Gorns, by the way.
I can take on two Gorns. I'm feeling that good.
Yeah.
Yeah, ready to go. Let's do this. Oh man, so here we are at the end, or of this, thing that started 5 years ago, and we only got 3 seasons because a little thing happened there, but we're bringing the starship in, and it's been a hell of a run, hasn't it been, Chris?
All good things. And I just want to say for the record that I don't believe the talk on the net that there was a season 2. I don't believe it. We went straight
No.
from 1 to 3.
Yeah, we went from episode 7 in season 1, and then we got here mysteriously. There was no season 2.
No season 2. No season 2.
Yeah. So don't know what happened to some of those other characters, but hey, it all worked out in the end, and I think we're happy.
Yeah, very happy.
Very, very happy. And as we now go into this final episode 310, The Last Generation,
This was
Star Trek Picard.
This was a fitting ending. I mean, this was the ending that Nemesis never was.
It wasn't. No, I mean, Nemesis was it was not the goodbye we deserved. It was not the final adventure. It was just on so many levels that show just was. I mean, that movie was just awful.
It was terrible. It was terrible. And the director, Stuart Bard, correct?
Yes.
He will never, ever enter Stovercourt.
No, he is not. He will go to the other. He's going on the Barge the Damned straight to Great Thrower.
That's right. He is going to the Barge of the Damned, cleaning the latrines.
Yeah, exactly. And you have never lived until you've cleaned a Klingon latrine, and you're not sure you want to afterwards.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, shall we get into this final adventure with our beloved crew of the Enterprise D, my friend?
I think so. Engage. Lead us off, Josh.
Engage. So, the episode opens with a transmission from President Anton Chekhov of the United Federation of Planets. Visually, it's interesting because the scene opens with what looks like the opening shot of the intro credits of the Next Generation, that big stellar nebula we see, and we hear Walter Koenig, Chekhov himself, reading this, and he reads this great speech. It's reminiscent a little bit of Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, where the president of the Federation in that movie tells people to stay away from Earth because of the probe. And of course, obviously, he's telling people to stay away this time because the Borg are attacking. And the younger members of Starfleet, 25 and under, have been assimilated. And he makes reference to his father, Pavel, who would offer some encouraging words like, there is always possibilities. And it's really great that he came back. We'll talk more about that later. But then we cut to the bridge of the Enterprise D. Picard and the team have figured out that there is a signal coming from a Borg cube, and they need to find that signal and cut it off at the source if they have any hope of freeing the Starfleet junior officers and saving the Federation. And they isolate the signal. It is coming from Jupiter, And they have figured out that Jack, Picard, and Beverly's son is the carrier, that he is the central point of the signal, and that he's directing this. Meanwhile, back on the Titan, Seven and Rafi and some of the other crew members that have not been assimilated are trying to retake the ship, which they managed to do by beaming the affected crew into the transporter rooms and locking them down while they regain control of the ship, which they managed to do, thankfully, to advanced Klingon technology and the cloaking device that they stole from the bird of prey, and managed using the cloak to cloak the Titans so that she is no longer under the network control of the Borg. So, Chris, what do you got?
So it's a dire dilemma on both sides because Earth, SEALs, and Sol Station cannot withstand the barrage for very long that they're being subjected to. So everyone knows time is of the essence. Meanwhile, on Jupiter, the Enterprise D discovers where they're at, which is they have been hidden inside the gaseous cloud on Jupiter, and it's a huge Borg cube. But it's only operating at 38% of capacity, which is an homage to Best of Both Worlds, when in her analysis of the Borg, now deceased Admiral Shelby, back then Commander Shelby, says, well, a Borg cube can function even extremely damaged up to 38% of it is damaged, it still functions. So this Borg cube is gigantic, but it's taken a beating. And so they're able to isolate in amongst all the Borg chatter that Jack is still there and that it's human waves, but Troy senses that he is completely been overtaken by the Borg. So it's time for one last away mission. And one almost last greatest Worfism when he says, and with me it'll be a threesome. But the away party is Picard, Riker, and Worf. Data wants to go down, but Picard says, no, you need it here on the ship. And so they beam down, and it's a Borg cube that is really a mess. And inside, and Riker says there should be thousands of drones here running around. And Worf says, you almost sound disappointed not to be overwhelmed by an army of Borg. And Riker says, well, I just find it more disconcerting when I walk into a situation that's really quiet. And so they locate where the beacon is that's sending out the signal to convert all of the people 25 and younger in the Federation. And at this point, Picard says, I have to leave you because I have to stop being a captain, and now I have to be a father, which follows on a great line I almost forgot to mention, that when he leaves with the away team, he turns around and he looks at everyone and he says, like, it has been an honor, which gives you the sense as a viewer, like, holy crap, this really could be it. And so then in a great performance by Patrick Stewart, and it's really been a great performance all series, but this episode, he really kicks into an even higher gear. He looks at Will Riker and he says, I can't tell you enough how much this has meant for me. And Riker says, I understand. You don't have to. And then Worf, in another great Worfism, says there are two things that a Klingon will never admit to knowing that they said. One is admitting defeat, and the other is admitting farewell. So at this point, they part within the cube, with Picard going to look for Jack, and Worf and Riker looking to get the schematics of where inside the cube the beacon is emanating from. And meanwhile, back on the Titan, they have taken over back the bridge. And again, we can talk about this more in the Gorn, like how easy it is to take the bridge back. I mean, it's the most unsecure. Oh, I'm sorry, no, the shuttles are the most unsecure part of a starship, with the bridge being a close second. But anyway, they notice that the Enterprise D with long-range sensors is in Jupiter, and they figure out they must be there to confront the Borg. And Rafi's like, the Enterprise D, that thing is ancient. But then Captain Seven points out, yes, but it's also cannot be connected and overtaken by the network that is guiding the other ships right now. So they decide to that they've got to buy them some time, and they're going to cloak in and out, shooting the ships to try to distract them, at least some of them, to pay attention to them rather than trying to take down Sol Station. Meanwhile, things are gearing up on the cube because Worf and Riker managed to find a node that is working. They managed to identify the schematics of the bridge, the schematics of the Borg cube, and they send it to the Enterprise. But because this is a threat identified by the Borg, the drones activate. And at the same time, Picard finds Jack, and Jack has been basically converted into Locutus 2.0, and he hears this voice, which of course is, ladies and gentlemen, it's when you have Locutus, you will have the Borg Queen. And it is a very damaged Borg Queen, but it is the voice of Alice Krige, and she's really messed up. Because last encounter with Janeway did a number on her. But he talks about how they, being the Borg, teamed up with Vadic, and they have figured out that the future of the Borg is not assimilation, but it's evolution that leads to annihilation. And Josh, I know you're going to talk about Worf and Riker and what happens next on the sword. So
yes.
Lead us off, my friend.
Okay, buddy. Well, so going back to the node where Riker and Worf are being confronted by Borg drones, Worf has managed to successfully take down a few of them with his sword. He gets wounded, which key rule, first rule about Worf, never shoot Worf, you just make him mad. And they duck back around behind the node for cover. And Worf tells Riker to pick up his sword. Riker tries to pick the sword up, finds it's really difficult. He's like, "Dad, this thing's heavier than it looks." And it says, "Check the hilt." And inside the hilt is a phaser. And Riker fires off at the Borg, killing them. He says, "You had this the whole time?" And Worf looks at him and says, "Swords are more fun." Which, yes, swords are more fun. Thank you very much. And with that, they have got the location of the node. They upload it to the Enterprise. And they discover that the node is deep, deep in the heart of the cube. There is no way to get at it from the Enterprise unless they fly the Enterprise inside the cube to hit it with everything they've got. So, Riker and Worf decide to run back to go save Picard and Jack, while Data begins to pilot the Enterprise into the heart of the cube, doing several variations at once. This is incredibly tricky flying. Even at one point, Geordi says that even his daughter, who is one of the best pilots at Starfleet, couldn't manage it, but Data, of course, being Data, pulls it off. Unfortunately, when they get to the main signal point, they realize that it is built so well into the cube that destroying it is going to destroy the whole cube. And that means everybody that is left inside the cube, Riker, Worf, Picard, and Jack, are going to die. Well, they might have just a minute before the chain reaction goes off and destroys the cube. So they're buying time, and Picard decides that the only way to save Jack is he must do something he vowed he would never do. He would never go back into the collective. And he pulls some of the connecting nodes off of Jack and then jams it into his neck and goes in there and finds his son, who is immersed in this reality where he thinks everything is perfect. And Picard is saying, "No, it's not perfect. This is all a lie." And she's just making you feel good about things. It's just bogus. And so they don't have any time to wait. So Beverly fires the photon torpedoes at the signal, and it disrupts it. And Picard says to Jack, "Well, if you won't leave, then I'll stay." And he embraces Jack, and Jack sees all of Picard's recent memories of him and his feelings about him. And Jack realizes this is wrong, and he pulls himself out of the collective and pulls Picard out. And the Borg Queen is, "You were born here, you will die here," and suddenly the Enterprise flies overhead and beams them out, and leaving the Borg Queen to scream "No!" as the cube explodes all around her. And meanwhile, back on the Titan, the Assimilate crew has made their way onto the bridge, and suddenly, with the loss of the signal, they are disconnected from the Borg, and Captain Seven embraces Sydney, and Chris, you want to bring us home?
Gladly. And she embraces her, and everything seems to be better. So everything seems to be okay. They're outside of the influence of the Borg, and the Enterprise D is returning to Earth. And then you hear the narration of Captain Riker, where he says Captain's log, and instead of a long number, he just gives perhaps Captain's log 1, because it is the start of a new day. Because everyone is freed from the connection with the Borg, and they talk about how now Admiral Crusher, the head of Starfleet Medical, has instituted a way to free all the younger, to purge from their systems, from biological systems, to the transporter of everyone who's under 25, the influence of the Borg, and at the same time detect the changelings that are still out there. So this is a step in the right direction. And we also see that what happens with Captain Seven, because let's not forget that C was a subordinate, and once he aided them in going to the Rigel system, and we see not Admiral Janeway. I will admit here, I stuck with this call all the way to the end, but I blew it. We get to see Captain Tuvok, which is pretty cool, and Captain Tuvok tells her, "Listen, because of their past and present exploits, the crew of the Enterprise has received a full pardon." Um, but that just leaves us with the issue of you, like you were subordinate to direct commander, and as a consequence, Starfleet Command has asked me to. And at this point, Seven, fearing that she's about to get kicked out, says, "Listen, I'm going to save you the having to do this because I realize that maybe the way I am, my beliefs are not compatible with Starfleet. So I'm hereby going to present my resignation." And in one of the key poignant moments, I think, of episode 10, Tuvok says, "This was sent before you left for the Rigel system. It's your performance evaluation." And we get one last Captain Shaw. And Captain Shaw says, "Commander Hansen, 7 of 9, she's subordinate, brash." And then he says, "But I am an old school captain, and my ways are the old ways. And, you know, she's just great, fearless, and, you know, she's going to rewrite the book, and I can't wait to see the book that she writes and the rules that she breaks. Maybe they were broken to begin with. I suggest when we get back to port that she be considered for promotion to captain." And Shevin just cannot believe this, and she sheds a tear. And then Tuvok just looks at her and says, "Resignation denied, pauses for effect, captain." Um, and then we fast forward to 1 year ahead of time, to see what has happened. And in a feat of incredible engineering, that Metro He in the DC area could only ever hope for, they have rebuilt Space Dock in less than a year, or just a year, and it's fully functional. And we see Admirals Picard and Admiral Crusher with Jack on his shuttle heading towards uh, the newly built space dock. And Jack is wearing the uniform of an ensign, and he seems to have been accepted to Starfleet into an accelerated course. That they both say it's an honor, but I loved how he just tongue in cheek says, "Oh, it's nepotism," which, let's face it, it may have been a bit, to the most famous admirals in Starfleet history. And they're going to take him, kind of like parents take a kid to his first day of school. They're taking him to his first assignment, and Picard says, "Well, you never told me which ship you're going to be assigned to." And Jack is kind of like, "Didn't I? Oh, okay." And so they go into Hangar 23, and they see the Titan. And Picard is like, "Oh, yeah, of course, the Titan. That makes sense." And then Jack is like, "Yeah, not quite." And Beverly looks at him and says, "We know how you feel about these things, Jean-Luc, about too much pomp and ceremony. which is kind of tongue in cheek because deep down he sort of does love it. And they come about the bow of the Titan, and Jack says it's been rechristened. And ladies and gentlemen, we have the Enterprise G. They say it's been rechristened in your honor. I'm serving on the Enterprise, and like Picard is just overcome with emotion as they circle around and they see the Enterprise G. And he goes. Then Jack goes aboard the ship, and he begins to bark out orders. Sits in the captain's chair, and we hear a familiar voice saying, "Get off that." And it is Captain Seven, and it is First Officer Rafi, who I almost forgot before we fast forward for a year. She does have an encounter with Worf where she is very grateful because someone has broadcast into the home of her son all the exploits he did as an undercover operative for Starfleet and all her commendations for valor. And now her son is overwhelmed and understands why she was absent all these years and wants to see her, wants to introduce her to her grandchild. And Worf just says, like, that was probably an honorable maverick. And he says, like, may things go well for you, Rafi, House of Musakar. And he says, like, may things go well for you, Worf, House of Mortok, may be a warrior for peace. And then let's go back to the bridge of the Titan. And there's a comment that's made, like, why would Starfleet ever give command of a ship to a pirate, a thief, and a spy? And Jack's position now is going to be, at least for the moment, special counsel to the captain. And they're going to go out for a shakedown cruise, which we all know nothing ever happens in a shakedown cruise. But there is one final great moment. And Josh, why don't you take us to that final great moment and the small scene that happens afterwards?
Yes. So Jack is in his quarters unpacking his suitcase when he hears a very familiar voice behind him saying, "Ah, young Jack, it's so good to finally meet you." And Jack turns and it's Q, who we thought died for some reason. And Jack still apparently has that Kirk era phaser that he pulls on him and then realizes, "Oh, you're Q, aren't you? My father told me all about you. Aren't you supposed to be dead?" And Q says, "Oh, I was so hoping the new generation would be far less linear." And Jack says, "Wait, I thought you told my father that humanity's trials are over." And Q says, "Oh, they are over for him, but for you, they're just beginning." But before we go, there was one other scene that happened. Our beloved crew get together in the new 10 Ford on Earth somewhere. Unfortunately, Guinan was not in this for some reason, but they get together. They're all sharing a drink. And they're all thinking about, maybe we should go home. But then Picard pulls out a deck of cards and they decide, "Oh, okay, let's play a quick hand of poker here." And they begin playing several hands of poker, laughing. And the theme music of The Next Generation starts to play as we pan up and we circle around them and seeing their faces as they continue to play poker while the credits run. And it's really how this should have ended. And that's where we end. And no one died. Our friends all came back together aboard our beloved Enterprise D. And it was a hell of a send-off for the greatest generation of Star Trek, in my opinion. Chris, I guess this is the part where we should move on to the good, the bad, and the Gorn. And there's so much good that we can talk about here today.
We might need a full extra episode just to talk about the good.
Yes.
So I will start us off here, Josh, by saying that I thought one of the best scenes, aside from Picard wishing everyone farewell and it's an honor to serve you, was when he is having the conversation with Beverly when he's aboard the cube. And he says, "Beverly, regarding Jack, hiding him, keeping him safe, you did everything right." I thought that was a beautiful bookmark to the intense scene we had in episode 3 in sickbay when they're confrontational and he's asking her, "Why did you hide his existence for me for so long. And it just shows that now he understands and he accepts her decision. And if this is it, he wants her to feel like, okay, this is, you did the right thing in my view. So I thought there's a powerful scene portrayed not only by him but also by her as he's listening to all of this, and she doesn't really say anything, but you see the on the face like how much all this means for her and the significance as he realized the two people she loves the most may about to leave her right now. And along those lines, I also really liked what they did with Troy. That Data can't find them with the with the sensors because the implosion of the beacon is interfering with it. Um, but that strong emotional connection when Riker is thinking that this is it, he looks at Worf and says, "Well, is this a good day, friend?" And Worf says, "Yes, this is indeed a good day to die." And he's thinking to himself, like, "Goodbye, Anzadi. Me and our boy will be waiting for you on the other side." And that powerful emotion, two people are connected to one another, and he senses it and sees the one that then is able to guide the Enterprise to find them so they can be beamed onto the ship. Um, that and I like that they gave her some humorous moments too. One thing that happens in the before we have the 1 year jump is that Data is going to counseling sessions, and she just has this tongue-in-cheek humor of like, "Oh, we've gone over a session again by another hour again." And you just get the sense like Data is okay, as even he tells Riker, and Riker just jokes after he leaves to Troy, like he's still batshit, isn't he? But she has some great moments too, and I also want to just shout out to the writers too. They've done a great job with Beverly Crusher character Kate McFadden this year, and at one point, the Borg cube starts firing on the Enterprise, and before they can go inside the cube to destroy the beacon, they say, "We've got to take out those turrets." And Geordi says, "Listen, Doc, I didn't have time to upgrade the weapon system, so you're gonna have to do this manually." And Beverly's a dead shot, and with a barrage of photon torpedoes, with full confidence in phasers, she takes out all of them. And Troy, Geordi, and Data just kind of look at her, and her reply is, "It's been a long 20 years," which I thought was perfect. So
Yeah.
that is some of the good. What good have you got, Josh?
Well, okay. Well, starting from last to front, I have to say that I was really glad to see Q come back. From what I read, they shot that in one afternoon. They told Jonathan John Delancey what they wanted to do. John apparently was very open to it. I think that there's a very good possibility we have not seen the last of Q. Although, actually, I mean, from what when he's saying not so linear, I think that has to do with the fact that, okay, even though he died, there's nothing that says Q cannot continue to show up throughout time and space however he wants, or maybe this is just or maybe it's him reborn with all of his earlier memories. We don't know exactly what death means for the Q. I really love the bonding scene between Jean-Luc and Jack, how they came together at that point. And this is, of course, a scene we've been waiting for all season. I'm glad they did not rush this, that they had just the right buildup for it, and I think that it turned out great. I think, and I of course obviously love the whole part about, Worf has a phaser hidden in the hilt of his sword, but he likes to use the sword because the sword is more fun. It's a good point. Yes, I agree. Swords are way more fun than phasers, and that was good. I like the fact that over these 3 seasons that Rafi's been trying to reconnect with her own family, but because of the nature of her work, she has not been able to. And now they know what she did for the Federation, that what she was doing, why she couldn't be part of their lives, that she was a hero, and that she was having to do some of the most dangerous things to protect them and protect the universe that anyone could imagine. And they're suddenly very proud of her. So that's something. I love the fact that Tuvok, it would have been better. I think it would have been awesome if we could have gotten Admiral Janeway, but Tim Russ, as Tuvok, that was great. Having him come in and announced that she's been promoted to captain, and that we get one last glimpse at Captain Shaw and how magnanimous he truly was as great character, great curmudgeon, but at his heart he was a kind-hearted man. And him decided that, yeah, she deserves to be promoted, she deserves to be a captain, we could do a lot worse. And she is awarded not just any starship but the Enterprise G. And I love that they recommissioned that, the Titan, to be the new Enterprise, although don't know what happened with the Enterprise F. That did not go well. But that was great. I, of course, love the poker scene. That was a great way to end it, because it calls back to the original Next Generation ending, All Good Things, where they sit around the poker table and they're playing together, and that's it, and the camera pans above them, and that great line, nothing wild and the sky's the limit. And that was great. But I gotta say, one of the things that really sold me on this episode was Walter Koenig coming back to Star Trek, even if it was just as a voiceover, and doing the voice of the president of the Federation. And he's also playing the son of Pavel Chekhov. And the fact that he also chose the name Anton as his first name, a nice shout out to Anton Leach, who of course played Chekhov in the J.J. Abrams in the Kelvin timeline, and who was taken way too soon from us. That was really wonderful. I had very few complaints. There is one thing, but we'll get into that in the bad. It was just only one minor thing, and I'll mention it when we get there. But yeah, overall, this was a great ending. It was a lot of sentimentality, a lot of fanfare, and the goodbye we truly of this wonderful generation that we truly deserved as fans, that we never got in Nemesis, that we waited 20 years to get, and we've had it, and it was a great send-off for them.
So many good things. I'll wrap up my good choices by talking about the intro, because I remember, Josh, our last episode, you said you wished that the ship would be the Enterprise D, so you got your wish. And I love how in the previous episodes we've seen in the intro the Shriek in the background, and now we get the Borg cube itself is there in the background, and how then the communicator image gets Borgerized, for lack of a better term. So from the very intro credits, we knew we were in for like a really good show, and we were.
Yes, we were, and we got something extraordinary that's just gonna, I think, stand the test of time, as far as Star Trek goes. And like I said, I have only one bad complaint about this.
Let's go into the bad then.
It's just one bad thing. Where's Loris? Is she sitting by herself at that bar waiting for Jean-Luc to show up? Or, it would have been nice if we could have got some closure there. Or was our closure just in the first episode that, okay, she's leaving, and if, she left the door open in case, but I guess that door is now closed. But it would have been nice to, have said something to her. I personally would have hoped that Picard would have married Lars, still had a good relationship with Beverly, and maybe introduced Jack to his new Romulan stepmom.
All a good wish, but I think you are correct in that door is closed, sealed, and like bricked up. He is clearly with Beverly now, which I sort of think he always should have been. So I'm actually okay with this. Yeah, Loris was there for the first episode, but yeah, it's clear that he's with Beverly now. Like he's adopting his role as a father of Jack, and let's hope Loris in the future doesn't try to kill Beverly. But even if he tried to, I think Beverly would be a handful, because again, when they're at the bar, at that final scene, Troy says, well, Guyna's probably mad because someone drank all the blood wine, and we're thinking it's going to be Worf. And she says, Doctor. And it's clear that she's kind of buzzed, because he's like, hey, let's play some music, and you just like, Worf, you have such a beautiful voice, and Worf's like, oh my god, no. So I totally hear you in the Laris, but I think it's team Picard and Beverly now, henceforth, and I'm okay with it. I think that's the way it sort of worked out. So my bad is just a couple of minor things. One being whoever pulled the trigger and ultimately killed Shaw, like we should have seen them court-martialed and sent to Rua Pente, because that is the one thing that I cannot nor Starfleet to forgive, which is killing Captain Shaw. So I would have liked an extra scene where, like, the poor ensign, I don't care if he was controlled by the Borg, like you get a one-way ticket to Rua Pente, with no return, or to what is it, Starbase 66? That's your permanent assignment now, permanent ensign. The other small part would be, so they beam them into the transporter, where they can lock the door. But couldn't you have also sent them to, like, I don't know, a cargo hold? Couldn't you have sent them into a shuttle and then just sent the shuttle away? Very minor. I mean, I really don't have anything bad to say about this episode, really. I just loved it so much. Like I said, kind of small nitpicking there. I was glad to see maybe this space talk lasted too long under that constant barrage, but again, I'm not going to nitpick this. This is just a really good episode. They hit all the marks.
Yeah, no, I think that the space dock definitely, that was something I noticed too. But I mean, that originally, I think that the space dock, I read somewhere that, its weapons capacity was somewhat limited, but it definitely didn't look limited. It definitely was holding up against a massive barrage, and maybe it actually is designed that way. Although I read somewhere in the specs that the primary thing about the starbase is that it's protected. It's got starships on standby there to protect it, but clearly it is a force to be reckoned with if there is no starships to aid it. So that it can stand up for a longer period of time than we thought.
A lot longer.
Yeah, but I think no, it was quite impressive. But I really don't. I don't think that was necessarily a bad thing. I'm sure that you had a lot of these older veterans who had some ideas to how we could keep the base going until help arrives, and clearly it did arrive in the form of the Enterprise D and Picard and the crew.
So let me ask you, Josh. I guess if you get behind the Mars orbital defense platforms, then there's nothing that those platforms could do to protect Earth if you're right on top of Earth.
Yeah, no, I mean the Mars. Yeah, that's several hundred million miles away. That
right.
Yeah, there's no way that's coming to aid. And obviously, you were going to need. Yeah, you needed the starbase. The starbase, I think, held up much better than I think a lot of people were. I think people have always been wanting to see the starbase in battle. And now we kind of have, and that it is quite an impressive defensive weapon that in action. And like I said, we've never actually seen it in action before, but clearly it can hold its own against a large fleet for an extent until help arrives. So yeah. So don't underestimate the Starfleet ingenuity there, folks. Moving into the Gorn, I have really one thing, and right now this is still just rumor. Alex Kurtzman is being very coy about it, although I think they dropped enough hints that this is going to be a thing, and I think the fans are going to demand it, just like they demanded Strange New Worlds, and that is, and Jack makes note of this with Seven. It's like, when she's sitting down and she's trying to figure out what her catchphrase is to make the ship go fast. And he says, it's all part of your legacy. And it's like, ooh, subtle hint there, guys. The idea of Star Trek legacy, that that everybody is talking about, and right now Alex Kurtzman and the other producers are kind of, downplaying it, but I'm like, guys, this is the logical next step is to go forward and give us the Star Trek Legacy show with Captain Seven of Nine and Commander Rafi and young Ensign Crusher Picard, I guess it's and everybody else. And what do you think about it?
Well, let me answer that, and then I'll get to my own things for that I have concerning the Gorn. I think that I think that's Star Trek Legacy is a good idea. If you think about it, at its peak, we've had Picard, Lower Decks, Discovery, and Strange New Worlds. So we've had 4 shows going at the same time. So we're taking off the board Picard right now. So we're down to 3. Then we're going to take down off the board Discovery after next year. So that leaves 2. They've announced Star Trek Academy. So that's going to be 3. So there is, I think, room for one more, and I think it should be Star Trek Legacy. I was wondering why they pushed back Star Trek Discovery to January, and then when I read that the writer's strike seems imminent, which is we haven't had a writer's strike in 15 years, and the last one I think lasted, was it 30 days or 100 days? I can't remember, but
yeah, I think the last one was about 30 days. The one before it, back in the late 80s, that was almost 100 days.
Okay, all right. So I think that a writer's strike would hinder going immediately to Star Trek Legacy, but moving Discovery to January buys them time to have another show on the air, and then in theory you would have perhaps Strange New Worlds season 3 follow it, sort of the model we're getting this year, and that buys them enough time to put together Star Trek Legacy. So I wondered why they put Discovery in January. Now I think that's a smart move, and so I think they are setting themselves up so that even with the writer strike, they would have time to go to Star Trek Legacy. But let's not forget that a lot of people were talking about a spin-off with Anson Mount's Captain Pike, and he was mum about it for like a year. And even when he came here just shore leave, and I don't think they were talking about it yet. And he was like, well, it all depends. It's negotiations. They're probably negotiating with Jerry Ryan. They're probably negotiating with directors and writers. So I don't think we're going to get the announcement immediately. I think we had like a year in between Discovery, when Discovery season 2, and then when we had the announcement of Strange New World. So I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be maybe a year before it becomes actually a formal announcement, but I think it will happen.
Yeah, and I've just been told by our producers that the last strike was 2007 to 08. It lasted 100 days.
Oh, okay.
So maybe I'm just kind of mixed up. I mean, it's been so long ago.
Wait, did our producer say that he wants to join our threesome? What?
What? Oh dear. No, but I we hope that this is. Oh, wait, he just replied. Yeah, okay. He's gonna get back to us on that. I think honestly, we hope that there will not be a writer's strike, but as a writer myself, I understand what's at stake here on that, and hopefully that this will be resolved to everyone's satisfaction before it comes to that. Nobody wants to see, even the people who are making the shows don't want the strike. But at the same time, it's like some things have to be resolved equitably. And so sometimes going on strike is the only option we have. That said, I don't know. I think Legacy is going to be the show we really want. I think I said this before, is I think everything past 2401 is kind of the sweet spot now for Star Trek. Although, I mean, I love Strange New Worlds. I think it's a great show, but I think going forward, it's going to be, I think a lot of people are looking for more content in the 25th century as well. But I am very excited about a month from now with the return, or is it a month now? Almost 2 months with the return of Strange New Worlds, and what's going to happen there with our intrepid crew of the original Enterprise. But sorry, not the original, the original Constitution class Enterprise, not the NX-01. That's the original. So,
So
I think though we've got a lot of Star Trek content to look forward to in the meantime. But I think that is our sweet spot. But
I've got a few more going things.
okay, do it.
Okay, thank you. One is that space dock was rebuilt really fast.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to assume that Starfleet engineering is much more efficient than, let's say, our local DC Metro. Um, so I am glad that they rebuilt it. But that was awfully fast. Maybe they were able to recover parts, or maybe it didn't completely descend into the atmosphere. Like emergency thrusters kicked in, and it allowed it to just be above the atmosphere without like igniting. And that happened off screen. Um, the Titan being redone into the Enterprise, I'm assuming that it took a beating all throughout the series, so I'm assuming there are a lot of upgrades, and I really hope they upgraded access to the bridge as the number one priority, because all throughout this season, number one is the bridge, and number two is access to shuttles. But put a key, an old-fashioned key and lock up there, but there has to be some way, somehow you can make the bridge less easy to capture. It's like the bridge is a revolving door. Like, oh yes, take the bridge now. I could probably take the bridge right after this show. Um, there seemed
Yeah.
to be implied that young Jack Crusher and young Sidney LaForge might have something going on when Captain Seven says, Helm, ignore everything. He goes without saying, ignore everything he says. And she says, I usually do. I want to echo something we've said in the show before, that girlfriend, you can do better.
Yes.
You can do a lot better.
Yes.
There's a lot more stars out there in the galaxy. Like, Jack Crusher, like, no. And then finally, as we were talking about legacies, I hope Admiral Shelby's legacy is one of ignominy, and one that they say, this is the person who almost destroyed single-handedly the Federation. We will remember with care and love the Picards, hopefully the Captain Shaws. But Admiral Shelby, no.
No. Yeah. Hers was that was a self-inflicted wound. I'm sorry. She should have known better than anybody else that, a networking Starfleet vessels like that was just an open invitation to the Borg. That was just, I don't know what her logic was and all that, or if there was any logic even. So, the heck with it. Maybe we don't say anything to Peter David because, she does figure quite prominently in his New Frontier novels, which were amazing. I do recommend them if, look at your library used bookstores for those, or, I'm sure Peter will be at short leave to sell some, leftover copies and stuff. But yeah, farewell, Admiral Shelby. You suck.
Yes,
but
I second that.
Yeah, I just not a beloved character, and I mean, but the actress was amazing. I just want to go on record and say the actress who played her is an amazing actress.
The actress is very good.
Yeah, it's just the badly used character.
I mean, I fairly certain she's not going to Stavropol. I'm not sure if she's going to the barge of the Dan, but she's definitely not going to Stavropol.
She's kind of going to limbo.
Limbo, yeah.
There's a Klingon. We do have a Klingon limbo. It involves a lot of dancing underneath bars, but
okay.
Yeah, so yeah, kind of. At any rate, yeah, I really am sad to see the show go.
It was an excellent way to close the book on The Next Generation. Each episode was better than the previous one. Maybe episode 7, they need to take a breather because you need, you can't run white hat all the time. But overall, it was excellent. And, you got to take your hat off to Terry Matalas. He wrote and directed the final episode. That is a man that knew what he was doing. He also knew what he was doing when he brought Jonathan Frakes to direct a lot of the episodes. And he just had the touch to, wrap everything up, bringing back the Ensign Rose, bringing back, Tuvok, everything was done right. Even the closing shot from above of the poker scene. I mean, just everything he did right. This was the perfect way to not only close the door, but as we just talked, hopefully open the door for something else.
Agreed. Yeah, we do hope it is going to open something else, and that Terry will be, brought in as the runner on that one, because I think he proved himself. That I think a lot of fans are going to look at this and say, yeah, Terry is the go-to guy. Him or Mike McManus. I'm nothing against Kurtzman. I think he's done a fine job post Les Moonves and all that. But if for some reason Kurtzman can't give it 110, can't be there 100% of the time, Terry would be a great showrunner for a Star Trek Legacy series. There's been so much good Star Trek content that I feel very confident in things going forward.
I think Matalas and McManus are the equivalent of Favreau and Filoni on Star Wars.
I think so. Yeah, I think you definitely are onto something there, because I think right now, if you're a fan, and you and I are both fans of both Star Trek and Star Wars, we're huge fans of this stuff, and so right now we're kind of in a sweet spot where, okay, we've got a great bunch of people running things at Star Wars now. We've got a great bunch of people running Star Trek now. So we're getting to enjoy tons of awesome content from the two main science fiction franchises. And I'm very excited about a lot of stuff we heard about at GalaxyCon a few weeks ago with David Tennant and various other Doctor Who alumnus were there. So we got a lot there to look forward to as well. But, yeah, we really hit something here, and I think going forward we're going to have a lot of great Star Trek content to enjoy over the next few years. That's going to keep us busy after we've had a drought for so long. Yes, Mr. Chris.
What should you prefer first? Would you prefer a Star Trek Legacy, or would you prefer a Voyager follow-up?
That is a very hard question.
I know.
You're putting me in a very difficult position here, Chris.
I know.
Okay. All right. Well, honestly, can I go with the third option, a Deep Space Nine follow-up?
I will second that third option.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, any one of them is fine. But, I would love to see my beloved Deep Space Nine once again and enjoy that. So, I think we're about ready to bring this one into Space Dock for the last time. Well, for Picard, I know that we are going to. I will be back next week at the same time to do a final look back at the entire Picard series. Chris, you're going back to your stuntman duties, aren't you?
Yes, I am going back to my lucrative side gig of a stunt butt double.
Yes, and I don't want to drop anything, but something to do with the fifth John Wick movie is you're doing, and
I can't talk about it for deep in negotiations.
Yes. Okay. Well, you keep us posted. And in the meantime, folks, we will continue to look into what happened to the Enterprise E and why it is not Worf's fault. Chris, you want to tell everybody where folks can find you?
Well, Josh, since this is a sign off, I will show something here so people can see from the much beloved Star Trek The Experience at the Hilton in Las Vegas. I thought it's a good way to bookend our podcast about Picard with a picture of the Next Generation and playing cards appropriate to the final scene. I will be next at AwesomeCon, and not only will I be there, but I will be running a panel. So if anyone going to AwesomeCon, the schedule is not going to be released for another month and a half probably, but I and my co-hosts, I and my other panelists will be running a panel which is from villain to supervillain in the MCU, a scale of nefariousness. If you want to learn what makes a villain a supervillain in the MCU, come to our panel at AwesomeCon.
That's excellent. And and definitely should go to that. And I can still be reached at Josh Pridgett Jr. on Facebook and also at meetup.org. Just look for the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup. And my book, Bigfoot and Other Tales of the Supernatural, is still available at Amazon and Kindle. As I said, I will be back next week for a general review of the entire Picard series. But we will be back together again in a couple of months for when we start our reviews of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Until then, I am Josh Pritchett.
And I am the cast completely signed of The Next Generation. There we go, people. I am Chris Pabon. Peace and long life.
Kapah!
See you in 2 months.
See you in 2 months.